that is on the topic trend-setting learning tools, e-learning and gamification. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Padmaja Sreenivas, who is Head of L&D at Wipro Technologies. Giving a brief introduction for Padmaja, she is a seasoned learning and development professional with over 2 decades of corporate experience. She is responsible for the inclusion and diversity charter for Wipro. Before moving to this role, she was an HR consultant at 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏 and consulted across domains like leadership, talent management, engagement, and succession planning. She is passionate about the role of learning in an organization and believes the future of learning is bright. With this, please welcome her with a huge round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. How long since we've been in a room like this and sat in person and attended a session? How long for people here? 2.5 years? So big round of applause for that. After 2.5 years, we are again in a room, again looking at each other, standing on stage, speaking with people. Awesome, wonderful. Thanks to 𝗘𝗲𝗂𝗁𝗗 Forum for providing that opportunity again. Okay, so Varada in the previous session has zoomed up 30,000 feet and looked at things. And as I like to tell in every session, that zooming up and zooming down, zooming in and zooming out are both important. So since he's done the zooming out and looked at things from 30,000 feet, I'm going to come down and zoom in into things and really talk of things that in day-to-day matter and how do we get things done. So here goes. Okay. So trend-setting learning tools, and these are some terms that we keep hearing, right? So there's a leaderboard. Do you have a blended learning approach? What authoring tools do you use? And I see some of the sponsors here. I think iSpring is in authoring tools. Yeah. We talk of AR, VR, MR, mixed reality. I see Tesseract here in that space. We talk of LMS, and then something called LXP has come in now. We don't know what the difference is. We talk of social learning, peer learning, on-the-go learning, mobile learning, blended learning. I don't know what all we talk of. And there's so many terms that's coming, just literally coming out of my ears now. So let's try and make some sense out of all this. And I'm going to focus on e-learning as a category, as to how do we get our e-learning right, because we are literally drowning in e-learning. Literally tears of blood come whenever there is an email saying, if you do not finish this e-learning course in the next 3 weeks, we will kidnap your children and hold them ransom. Yeah, I mean, literally. Yeah, so we get those. And then we also get e-learning, which we hope we can just put our earphones on and let it run. But no, it's quite cruel. It makes you do things, makes you click on a button, otherwise you can't finish it. So you really can't return your mails and continue on your calls while that e-learning is going on. So life is not fair. And then somebody tells us there's bite-sized learning, which if you do on the go, you will become a better leader. You'll be able to give better feedback. You'll be able to do, you'll basically become, I don't know, Superman or something of that nature if you finish all those e-learnings. I don't know how that happens either. But what I do know is small things that we can do to make sure that some of these things work. So I'm going to focus on that now. We talk of anytime, anywhere learning. Can anybody recognize what this is? What is a shorthand? For the younger folks who have no idea what even a typewriter looks like. Others just cannot understand. Okay, but what is the purpose of it? You can take dictation, what is called dictation faster, right? Speed. You can write with great speed. You can take notes from somebody. If somebody knew shorthand, they would be vigorously taking notes of what I was saying and could do that. Of course, we don't need it now because we can record everything, but there was a time. Do you know how shorthand was taught to people? 1860s I'm talking about, 1860s, 70s. Do you know how people learned shorthand? Any idea? So Sir Isaac Pitman was the person who created the shorthand as a way of writing faster. And it coincided with a time in England when the postage stamp rate was made uniform across the country and it became fairly cheap to send mail. And he actually, in a way, is the father of anytime, anywhere learning because he created course material which could be posted to people and sent to people's homes where they could then learn that shorthand. And he, he was much forward in his thinking. He believed, like all of us today believe, that a feedback loop is very important for learners. And hence there was a feedback loop built into it. So people would finish assignments and send it back to him, and he would grade it and send back comments by mail again. Yeah, much slower than what we do today, but the concept was similar. And because it was by post and it was anytime, anywhere learning, a lot of women trained themselves on shorthand, which is why a lot of secretarial staff in the beginning itself were women, because they found it easy to learn it sitting in their house and found it easy to get those jobs, and hence moved. Anyway, that's trivia aside, learning trivia. But the point being that it's not us in 2020, 20 or 2010 that suddenly we've discovered anytime, anywhere learning. People have done it before and seen how effective it is. How many people in this room have got brilliant tutorials or CAT material home? Show of hands, please. Brilliant tutorials? That's all? CAT material home? Online? Yeah? So that's all where all this anywhere, anytime learning came. And just as the British postal system allowed 𝗍𝗂𝗃 Pitman to create this, the web revolution created anytime, any learning access for everybody, and that's how e-learning came. But e-learning, like everything else, has its good and the bad. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about the levels of e-learning that exist and how do we as learning professionals really look at the different levels and understand what we are getting when we ask for an e-learning. I learned this the hard way, because when I started looking at e-learning, everybody and their uncle would come and sell me e-learning. And say that it's most advanced, and they would throw terms like it's not made in Flash, it's made in HTML5. I don't know what that means. They would say it's mobile compatible. It's internet hosted but mobile compatible, but it's not an app. I didn't know, for God's sake, what that meant. So that's how I reached where I am, and I want to share that with you. There are three things when somebody comes and gives you e-learning. There are three things you need to look at. What's the level of interactivity? What's the level of interactivity it has? How does it navigate? And what is the level of animation that gets used? So obviously, if it is level 1 e-learning, it has to be much cheaper for you, much better fitting into your pocket. Level 2 and level 3 are going to be more expensive, more time consuming, but also more impactful. Now, what does level 1 interactivity mean? It means basically what I'm doing here. If you just recorded it when I'm clicking my slides and posted it somewhere, it's level 1, which means it has standard interactions like click. So you're allowed to do a next and a back and a finish. That's the level. Then you can do an image click and reveal what is behind the image. So the image you click and something else opens up behind it. You have MCS RQ and MCM RQ. Any idea what those two are? Nice fancy abbreviations I've got. Any idea what MCM RQ is and SQ is? Multiple choice, single response, multiple choice question, multiple response. That's all, nothing more than that. So is there one right answer or are there many right answers? So that's the basic level. So if you have something that moves with a click button, goes back, something that you can click a finish, and something that allows you to take quizzes in between and gives you options and tells you whether you're right or wrong, that's level 1 e-learning, as basic as it can get. There's level 0 also, which means even that does not exist. It's basically a PowerPoint deck with music and voiceover. That's practically level 0, but level 1 is this. Yeah. Level 2. Now here there are a little more custom interactions. There might be a drag and drop. There may be a match the following where you actually, pick that option up, take it, try and drop it in a box. It's a wrong answer, so it jumps back to where it was and you again try it. So a little more interactive, a little more fancy, a little more interesting. That's, match the pair, drop down. Those are which takes it to level 2. Level 3 is where you have gamification, where you have interactive animation, where you have business simulations. And I will talk much more about business simulations after this, what really is a business simulation. That's your level 3 interactivity in e-learning, right? So most of us, what we do, which level do we get e-learnings in most of all? Which e-learning level have you done mostly? 1 and 2 at best, 2 also rarely, but one mostly, right? And you pay your right arm for getting that made. Yeah. The second thing that you need to take care of when you're looking at evaluating e-learnings is the navigation. And this is most important because it gives learner control. We always talk of the learner having the control of the learning. How do you do that in e-learning? How do you give control to the learner in e-learning is the navigation that you need to build into it. So is it linear, which means that there is only one way to go. There is only one way to go, either forward or backward, but I cannot jump. I cannot jump sections. I cannot decide the way I'm going to navigate this e-learning. That's simple linear navigation. In the next level, there is both linear and non-linear, which means if I start and you start, we both can go through the e-learning in a different path. So I can choose, let's say I'm doing a session on e-learning on diversity and inclusion. I can decide to do microaggressions first, and I can do unconscious bias later, and I can do inclusive behavior third, and you could do it in another format altogether. Right? You can navigate the way you want with whatever interests you. A true e-learning will actually let you skip sections which you think you're already very good at, or just ask you to take a quick quiz. If you score well, it can ask you to not do that section because you already know it. That's what navigation is. And the third one is custom navigation, where each learner, depending on the path he or she takes, will be taken to different places, and our journey might be very different depending on what we already know or how we want to navigate it. I think you can understand how it gets more complicated to create as you increase the levels. The third one is when you have the third parameter is animation. The first one, of course, has only default animation, which as technology progresses, default animation itself is becoming more and more fancy. So whatever is readily available in, let's say, a PowerPoint or an HTML5 or earlier Flash, etc., is what will be given to you, nothing more than that. The second one, level 2, will have moderate animation. It will have a process map. It will be able to animate graphics for you, etc. And the last one will be more infomercial style, where the character will be talking, where the lip sync is perfect, where the animation is moving across. You can move the animation, etc. And that's going to be a level 3 learning. Now, of course, level 3 learning is most expensive to get created. Level 1 is the simplest. And hence, it's important when somebody tries to, tell us how effective e-learning is going to be, we know what to ask for, and that's the reason why I'm sharing this knowledge gained after making a lot of mistakes here. Any questions so far? Any experiences anybody would like to share? Any other thing that you have come across in e-learning which makes it very impactful? In my personal experience, if I am at level 2, it's quite impactful. I really don't have to go to level 3. If I can get some part in level 2, which means I can give user access and I can make the navigation a little user-friendly, dependent on the user, I get a lot more traction from people I give it to. Also, if I can give them the decision of whether they need to take up a module or not, and when they want to take up that module, it makes it far better. For very simple things like necessary things like what are mandatory compliance issues, level 1 is good enough, because basically we want people to either hear it or read it and then go ahead. Of course, one thing which is not mentioned here is accessibility. Is your e-learning accessible to people with hearing impairment or visual disability? That's something you need to always test for. And a lot of times it doesn't come unless you've asked for it. So be careful of that. If there are any, yeah.
All this?
Where does what fit in?
Where does the learning impact fit in?
Learning impact, I cannot answer, but learning retention is something I can. So learning impact basically will depend on what you're trying to do and what's the messaging, right? But learning retention is something that the level of e-learning can influence. Level 2 retention is better because the involvement of the learner is higher. And the moment I allow you to skip what you already know or test you on basic knowledge and say that you can already move to the next level, that increases learner retention. And of course, when you have interaction, when you allow the person to explore what's there on the screen and then decide where the person wants to go, again, the involvement is higher and hence retention is higher. But like I said, it costs money, so it has to be really important. So if I'm going to do mandatory trainings, I would stick to a level 1 and not go beyond that. But if I'm going to do things where I need a learner involvement higher, where I need, for leadership lessons or for consulting skills or some listening skills, something which is a skill-based or leadership-based thing, I would try and go to level 2 if I can afford it.
normally get confused when the organizations approach us. One question that I have is, any research that you have made, you have done a lot of work in this area, any research you have made on, like on the maturity level of the people, I mean, who likes at what level, like level 1, level 2, level 3, maybe in terms of maybe age or in terms of, like profile, like workman kind of a people, they like a level 3. Any such research?
So let me finish. I'll come back to your question, but like I said, I'm going to talk of the gamification and business simulation part of it, which is level 3. And once I've talked of what really is a simulation or how do you gamify your e-learning, I will come back to this question. Yeah? Yeah, this one. Ashi, can I take one question more? Yeah, there's a question there.
Good morning.
Tell me.
It's a very interesting slide that you've got there, and I want to just piggyback on the question that the gentleman in the front just shared. I want to understand how much of it is enough, because I mean, we do a lot of this, and everybody is trying to sell something or the other, and we are trying to go ahead and get that done. How much of it is enough? Like, is there a number in terms of your research? Thank you.
Is there a number in the sense of how much e-learning can one person consume, or is there a number in sense of how much e-learning on a topic is? Can you specify a little more?
Probably how much can I consume in terms of, all right, this is good, and this is enough. After this, I switch off, because with the number of e-learning offerings that we do as a learning organization, we have those mandatory courses, we have our, obviously, whatever we are trying to achieve with our learning priorities. That's when, how do I draw the line and say this is enough? Probably in a month or in a quarter. Very simple, very basic, but crucial.
We've probably reached there, We've probably reached the enough stage already. Yeah, unless somebody really threatens to kidnap my children, I'm not doing another e-learning. Yeah, but that apart, it's the purpose that you have and what you're going to do with it. It's the, as a standard, we all know this. I don't know, I mean, everybody in this room probably says it once every week, what's in it for me, is the voice what the learner asks, right? And that's the question again, that am I introducing animation, am I introducing increasing the levels of interactivity just to, because all of this causes stickiness. Why can't I just read a book and learn all of this? Why do I even need an e-learning? Why do I even need, spoon feeding like this? Why do I have to have something in 2 minutes that I need to consume, and I expect that in 2 minutes I will become master of something, right? It is because there's already too much, and hence our job is probably to reduce the amount of e-learning that we ask people to consume, but increase increase what it gives to the person. So mandatory I'm not going to touch, because mandatory we have, I think, reached a place where we're happy because people have to do it and a tick in the box happens, and it's compliance. And I don't want to, the one thing I don't want to do is argue with a compliance person. Right, that's dangerous territory to argue with people who are in compliance. So I don't want to go there. But apart from that, when it comes to learning, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to skills, when it comes to those kind of things, e-learning again is something which some people take to very easily, like fish to water, and for some people it's very difficult to get tied down to and learn. And hence, how interesting do you make it? Because this is only levels of e-learning. I've not even touched on storylines. I've not even touched on how do you tailor the content such that it is reader friendly, right? All those things will matter, not really the levels of e-learning. Yeah, but I will come to the interesting part of e-learning, which is business simulations, right? Now, before I do that, like a true learning professional, I want to show you this, which all of us know, and all of us have told many people, so I don't want to be preaching to the choir here. But I do want to say that 𝗘𝗲𝗂 really helps us even when it comes to e-learning and simulations, business simulations. Why? Because the concrete experience is where it starts. Of course, this is not experience sharing, it's concrete experience that is there, and concrete experience that you have generated in the classroom. All of us are experts at designing activities in classrooms, and making people do some things and then debriefing that, right? Now, one is physically having those, outdoor activity or indoor activity, or with pieces of paper or straw, or, we've used every kind of clay and straw and bricks and wood, everything's been used. So what do? We try and create an experience, and we try to draw learnings from that experience. Now, simulations is a beautiful way of creating that concrete experience. Why I'm saying this is simulation is not a game. It's a game which, it's game in the sense, yes, it's fun, it's involving, it's competitive, but it's not a game in the sense, it's not something you do and you walk out and you forget about it, right? If somebody tells me that they enjoyed the workshop because the game was wonderful, I think I've done a very bad job. So I'm bringing up 𝗘𝗲𝗂𝗁 so that I can then highlight how do you use a simulation, what is a simulation truly. Because just like e-learning, everybody comes and gives us something and says it's the most awesome e-learning on earth. Everybody brings something to us and says it's a simulation. So as learning professionals, we really need to understand what is and what is not a business simulation. And that's the attempt in the next few minutes. Is it a simulation or not? These are a few questions you need to ask. Is there a storyline? Is there a storyline like a proper movie storyline? A movie is not one scene. Remember, a movie is number of scenes stitched together to make a story. It has a beginning, it has a character arc, and it has an end. Different characters move through the story and do different things. Does your simulation have a story? Or is it different instances, different scenes which have nothing to do with each other that have been put together and called a simulation? The second, this one is interdependence. Do the players of the simulation have interdependence between each other? Does what I do impact how 𝗟𝗏 plays his simulation? What I do, does it impact what somebody else has done and the results that you get? Because remember, in real life, it does. In real life, what I do impacts what other people get, right? In real life, if finance takes a policy decision to not extend, to give only 30 days instead of 60 days to pay our bills, it impacts everybody down the line. It's not just finance that gets impacted. And hence, decisions in business are interrelated. In the simulation, is there that interdependence that you've been able to bring about? Is there branching? That means the decisions I take lead me elsewhere, and the decisions somebody else takes leads them somewhere else. So is there branching that's happening in the simulation? If all of us are going to exactly go down the same path, then it's a level 2 e-learning, all right, but don't call it a simulation. What is the complexity of decision making? Which means that, do you keep giving me 4 choices and I have to take one choice and there's only one right answer and I move ahead? Well, then again, e-learning, sorry, not a simulation, right? But I will explain this a little more. Some questions you need to ask. Does the simulation generate an experience? Does it generate an experience which is worth talking about later and debriefing later? If it's few questions and few answers, it's created some knowledge maybe, some awareness, but it's not given me a experience to talk of. So I'm going to ask you these questions and you have to tell me tell me yes or no, and tell me whether if it's a yes, is it a good simulation, or is it no, is it a good simulation? So first question is, are there ambiguities? If the answer is yes, does it make it a good simulation or a bad simulation? So the answer to, are there ambiguities? Yes, it makes it a good simulation. Can you tell me why? So that's how real situations are. Real situations never have perfect knowledge, perfect information, and perfect outcomes. And hence, in a simulation also, are there ambiguities which the person struggles with and says, but listen, I don't have enough information to take a decision on this. Absolutely, dude, you'll never have enough information in real life either. So you decide with what you have, you work with what you have, and that's what you got to do here. Remember, a simulation is mimicking life, and hence. Oh, by the way, do you know what I compare a simulation with when I start a simulation or I design a simulation? For me, a simulation is, what does a doctor who's training to be a surgeon operate on before he gets a live patient? Before I go and lie down and ask him to cut open my abdomen, what else would the doctor have done before that? Who would he have operated on? A cadaver, right? A cadaver, which mimics a person, which mimics the internal organs of a person, but is not a real person. The damage you can do is not the same, but it mimics, right? So you can do experiments, you can do whatever you want, nothing will happen, but it mimics life. A simulation is like that. Is it a good enough cadaver to learn from? If it's a good enough cadaver to learn from, then you trust the doctor more. But if the doctor says, no, I've only seen some diagrams, and here I am ready to cut you open, not on me, dude, find somebody else, right? And that's what a good simulation is. A good simulation is like that 𝗘𝗲𝗏. Very dark example, but nevertheless effective, right? Okay, next question. Does it allow dynamic interplay between participants? Should the answer be yes or no for a good simulation? Does it allow dynamic interplay between participants? Yes or no? Yes. If it's a good simulation, it will allow. Good business simulations often allow this. I have rarely come across leadership simulations which are at that level yet. But good business simulations, good scenario simulations, good strategy simulations, they will have the dynamic interplay between participants such that decisions I take will impact you and the decisions you take will impact me. Is that happening? Does it have one right answer? Yes or no? I can't hear you. No. It should not have one right answer. If you give me a simulation which has 4 choices and I have to take one of those choices every time in a series of questions, it's a good e-learning, but not a simulation, because in a simulation mimics life and life never has one right answer. Our right answers could be very different, and that's the problem I have. I'm saying I would not do any of these 4 things. Why are you forcing me to take one of these choices? Because this is not what I would do in real life anyway. Does every group experience it the same way? Yes or no? No. Every group should not experience it the same way, right? Because I want what the person does or what the group does to have an impact on how they follow through, right? These are some questions you need to ask before you decide whether it is a good simulation or not. And then, of course, one thing you will remember is the 𝗘𝗲𝗏 example. So remember, is it a good 𝗘𝗲𝗏 to perform, to learn surgery on or not before you really go out there and do it in the real world? Now, 𝗀𝗏's model had 3 other steps. Anybody remembers those 3 other steps? We're all learning professionals. I can't not have this audience give me that answer. What are the other 3 steps after experience? After getting an experience, what do? You have to get into observation and reflection. Then you get into abstract conceptualization, and you get into active experimentation after that. Remember, the simulation has only given you the first step, that's concrete experience. We as trainers, facilitators, or whoever's in the room, or even if it's a report that goes after the simulation to the person, has to do the other 3 steps. Has to propel people, compel people, nudge people to go into observation reflection, abstract conceptualization, and finally go into active experimentation on the job. Your on-the-job part is the active experimentation, but the other 2 are still with you as learning professionals to do. So please, what you do after a simulation is these things. A strong debrief that encourages the active reflection part. Otherwise, if most people do a simulation for an hour and a half and then say goodbye in 10 minutes and that's it, that's done. But that's a big waste of the great experience you've created. Till you have that conversation with people, till you have that active reflection happening in a group, if it's a group session, it's not the end. You leverage group learning and peer learning, of course, to get into active experimentation and abstract conceptualization, that if this is what happened in the simulation, what would you do in real life? How would this pan out? What steps would you take? And the last one, of course, discussion on applying learning to the real world. So if now coming back to some of the questions, simulation is of course, it will go into augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and we can go on talking of those things also. AR, VR is the next buzzword, MR, right? And we have companies in that who are sponsors of this. AR, VR will only be next level of what business simulations does, because that will become 3-dimensional. The experience will be even more enhanced. It will feel even more real. But the logic will still remain the same. The logic of not having one right answer, the logic of being able to do things differently, all of those that are true for a simulation will continue in the AR, VR, MR world. And hence, all the things that we talked of in Kolb's learning cycle, the experience will change. The experience will get even more enhanced with those other tools coming in. The fancy glasses coming in and the fancy, I don't know, lightsabers coming in or whatever else is going to come in. The experience is going to get much more enhanced, but our job to make sure that the learning sticks and there is learning and not just fun is to make sure that the other 3 steps of 𝗘𝗲𝗂𝗁 are taken care of. On that note, I think I have already gone over time. Thank you so much for being a great audience. Any quick questions, if I can take, or I'm around, we can always have a chat.
Networking break post this,
Yes,
so people
yes.
can catch
So
you up.
I'll catch up with you. Thank you so much for being a great audience.